We're done with the Cultural Committee. We're going to circle back with the casino's executive reports. Here today is Tyler Bouchard from the Cultural Committee. He's here because we had the direction that the committees were supposed to come here and then possibly update the bylaws as well. So Tyler, whenever you're ready, take it away, my friend.
Okay, good. Ani, everybody. I am the Ogima Nini for the Cultural Committee, and my co-chair, Laura Bouchard, is also on Zoom. She had to stay home. We have some sick kids at home, so. The first thing that I would like to ask is if we could smudge in here today to start off the Cultural Committee meeting with everything that's going on the outside world. I think smudging right now would be rather appropriate. So if it's okay with you guys, I have a smudge pan here.
You talking about smudging, Tyler? Yeah, fire it up, my friend. Okay, Tyler, I appreciate you doing that for us.
Yeah. So for the past several months here, we've been meeting as a cultural committee and per your guys' direction, looking at our bylaws to make sure that they're open to all our members. Fortunately enough for our bylaws, it was already in there. So we changed a little bit of a wording around to make sure it was clearer that all members are allowed to join our cultural committee and be a part of it. And with the extra time, we decided to go through all of our bylaws and kind of revamp it up. The last time the bylaws were went through, I believe, was 2015. So we as a committee felt it was time to go through them and make sure that we all agreed to the bylaws. It's kind of like a rebirth of this committee, right? It's been kind of dormant for a while. So we sat down with our fellow committee members, and this is the bylaws that we have come up with. I don't know if you guys had a chance to review them yet. Do you want me to go through it section by section, or?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Oh, is anybody online? Nobody's online.
They're in your packet.
Oh, yeah, mine was on.
Well, how about this, Tyler? So we've been updating bylaws and codes for different departments. Why don't we go through this, and then you just explain why you're crossing things off and why you're changing things, and then we'll give board members the opportunity to put their hands up at any time, and if anyone has any questions, comments, we'll stop and we'll adjust it at that point. Does that work for you?
Yep.
Okay.
That's perfectly fine.
All right, let's do it then. So we'd start with the page that says mission, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so take it away.
So for this one, our mission is to strengthen, preserve, protect, and promote Anishinaabe B'Madziwin, sustained by the 7 grandfather teachings of Bawatang Anishinaabeg that connects us with Gitchumanidug, I'm going to butcher this, Ashka Magokwe, and all our relations and the greater populations of Mikinup Munising. Basically, what we did for our mission is we just used, instead of having the English words in there, we put our Anishinaabe in there.
Very appropriate. Aaron?
Hey, right off the get, can we get rid of the word mission? Tribes all across the country have taken mission out of their purpose statements of the tribe because a mission is a missionary. And why do we want to keep using that term? And it might seem trivial, but tribes there's a movement happening right now. Tribes across the nation have gotten rid of mission statements. And it would be nice if all of our committees did it.
You want to swap it with the word goal? That works,
Or
right?
purpose, or
Purpose, I like purpose.
come up with, ask the committee what the better word would be, but.
Okay. All right. Anything else before we move on, guys? Okay, we can keep going, Tyler.
So if,
What about vision statement? Just an idea.
We have that next.
yeah, that's our next one, Rob.
Oh, perfect.
So we have vision statement, and for our vision statement, the only thing that we really changed was the words themselves for the Anishinaabe. As we've progressed in our language growth, we happen to have Wayne Soames. I don't know if he's on the Zoom or not, but he's a very fluid language speaker, and he's helping us with the language process and coming up with those terms for our 7 grandfathers. So we have our 7 grandfathers listed, and we just have those words are changed in the Anishinaabe.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. We can keep going.
Do you want me to read the whole thing or just what we struck out and changed?
I would just do what you struck out and change, otherwise you're going to be here all day. We all know how to read. Yeah.
Okay. So for this next paragraph here, which is still a part of our vision statement, we put on here to serve as an advisory council to the board of directors and to help tribal members. And then we also rewrote Anishinaabe B'Madziwin in that section.
Austin?
Yeah, just, yeah, Lana has a question or comment. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I just have a comment in the order of the 7 grandfathers there, Tyler. And I'm just going to offer this up because I was taught that, actually from Rainy and Grass. I went to one of their ceremonies, and, they did the 7 hills, the 7 grandfathers, and there is an order for those. And I'll just put them out there. It's love, respect, bravery, humility, honesty, humility, wisdom, and truth. And each one of those comes at a certain time in life, and it takes a long time to explain that. But there definitely is that, and I think that we should put them in that order. And I can send them to you in an email. And I'm sure you know that too.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I think the reason why they're listed the way that they are, we kind of copied the 2015 version of this, and 2, it kind of lays out the rest of the bylaws, and so they're kind of reflecting how the bylaws are written out. But we can definitely change the way that the order goes.
Well, even if you wanted to I'll send you an email on just that teaching that I got, and you can talk about it with your committee too, Tyler, and I'll just give you a little, I just wanted to add that, so I'll send you an email.
Okay.
And you guys can decide how you want to go there. I just wanted to offer it up. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for sharing that, Lana. We can keep going.
So on the next page here, we just struck out the old language for what we're calling ourselves. The main thing is Wewia is circle in Anishinaabemoan. So instead of just saying Wewia circle, we kind of struck that out to make sure that we're not repeating ourselves in English and Anishinaabemoan. So what we decided to do as a committee is to follow kind of what other bylaws do with their articles and making sure that everything's kind of ran smoother than normal. So we put the Anishinaabemoan and also each article. So when somebody comes back to reference this, they can, if they don't know the Anishinaabemoan, they can just reference, well, Article 1 says this. So it's a little bit more fluid for folks who don't speak Anishinaabemoan. I myself, I struggle with it a little bit too, reading it. I more hear it that way. So with Article 1 here, which is wisdom, we put on here, the committee will consist of 10 tribal members, and there will be 10 tribal members appointed to the committee by the Board of Directors of Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians. These members shall consist of 5 male and 5 female members. So in the original, we had 15 members, and it would be 5 board members who sat on the committee. So when we thought about that, if we're coming to you, or you're coming to us, or we're coming to you as a communication, and if we have 5 board members already sitting there, then there's no communication with the other board members. So we just kind of struck those board members out, and then now we just have a sitting committee of 10.
How many do you have now?
Right now we have myself, Laura, Wayne, Karen, and Luann. So we have 5 right now. So the next line that we changed is to receive necessary expense reimbursement if available. We wanted to put that in there because we don't know how this committee is going to go, if there's going to be resources for mileage or anything like that. So we just put that little clause in there, if available. That way, if there isn't anything available, then it's fine. But we just wanted to have our bases covered with that. Each committee member has a responsibility to participate actively in making decisions on behalf of the committee and to exercise their best judgment while doing so. Just a normal clause of a better judgment and making sure that we're, making the best decisions. So here's on the next article, which is Article 2. This is where we had to change a little bit of wording to make sure it's open to all tribal members. And the only thing that we had to change here is it will be open to any tribal member. And we didn't put of the community on there. We wanted to make sure that it was very stated that every single tribal member could be a part of this committee.
Go ahead, Aaron.
So do we have a definition section that defines tribal member, so we know it's Sioux Tribe member? Or should we put Sioux Tribe member wherever Sioux Tribe is?
What are your thoughts on that, Tyler?
I think we discussed this within the committee, and I thought that we said, well, this is a Sioux Tribe committee, so it's kind of, yeah.
Assumed, basically?
Right.
Yeah. Maybe we should spell it out, though, just to be safe. I mean, we don't review and change bylaws too often, and if, we give that definition, it can't be left to interpretation any other way.
Okay.
Well, just a quick reminder on that, I believe we still have 1 or 2 non-natives on one of the elder boards.
They're allowed to for the bylaws.
Yeah, so just, sometimes those definitions are important is what I'm getting at, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you want just Sioux Tribe members, it's got to be spelled out.
Okay.
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 So we added in that the meetings will be held monthly at an agreed upon time, date, and location. Sometimes we have to change our location. Normally we meet in Naganagijic, but in lieu of a funeral or something like that, we're going to have to change our location. And then we changed how a meeting can be called, a special meeting, and we changed it to where both Ogimug have to call it. So that way, if there's an issue later on in years where one Ogimug doesn't agree with the other, and then this Ogimug calls a special meeting, we made that to where, nope, both have to agree, because we believe that, written in these bylaws, that we are a consensus committee. So everybody has to agree.
Aaron?
Do we have any current disagreements among the Ogima?
No, no. No. So we were just trying to think about this in the long run, right? The last time these have been gone through is in 2015, so we're in 2025. So we wanted to make sure that we were thinking about the longevity of this committee, not so much while we're sitting on it, but the ones that come later, that there will be no issues going forward. So the next one, we're down to Article 3, and this kind of clarifies our positions. So we're trying to follow a little bit of normal bylaws that aren't necessarily a cultural committee. This committee is a little bit special in what we do and how we handle things, but we wanted our bylaws to reflect both a normal set of bylaws and our cultural committee. So here we have it's spelled out to where there's a chairperson and a co-chair, and actually that I would like to correct that. That should be a co-chair and a co-chair. That way there's nobody higher from the male or female side. And then we have the Anishinaabe, which is Ogima Anini and Ogima Kwe. And then we have a secretary, and the chairperson or their designee shall preside at all committee meetings. The chairperson and/or all their designees shall present all committee matters requiring the Board of Director actions to the Tribal Board of Directors.
Okay, if you don't mind taking a pause, Tyler has a question or comment.
Yep.
Good, Tyler.
Just the way that this is reading, it looks like the chair can only be man and the co-chair can only be woman. Is this correct?
No, that's as I'm reading it, it was an error. It should be co-chair and co-chair.
Co-chair and co-chair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add something? I'm sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand on here.
Yeah, go ahead, Laura.
So it is important, though, in case this was lost in translation, because there are two co-chairs. One co-chair does have to be male, one co-chair does have to be female, just to maintain balance.
Yeah, that's fine, but the way it reads is that
Yeah,
there's a chairperson and that is male and the co-chair is female.
my bad. It got lost in the notes, but that will correct it.
Okay. Appreciate it, Laura. Thank you.
So if we go down, the next fix is that we took out telephone voting. That way there's no votes that aren't public to all committee members. And so voting can only be done in person and in email. So there's always a paper trail for voting and calling meetings and everything like that. And then it says the email vote must be sent to all members of the committee for communication and transparency. There's a 5-day notice to be given for a special meeting if possible, and a quorum shall consist of the presence of the majority of 50+1 of the active members of the committee. All committee meetings shall follow Robert's Rules of Order when necessary, while not engaging in a community talking circle. So we're trying to bring in some of the Robert's Rules of Orders in our bylaws, but the majority of our meetings are going to be in that talking circle format, to where everybody gets a chance to share. Only when it has to be put into that format will we ever put that in that format. I don't think we've ever done anything as the committee right now, other than our voting in of our chair, our co-chair, and our secretary. That's really followed Robert Rules of Order. So Article 4, all reappointments to the committee shall require a written letter of intent. Each member unable to attend a regular meeting of the committee must notify the committee secretary of this, or it should say, or of his or her absence. Members having 4 or more unexcused absences during a 12-month period may forfeit their membership. Forfeiture of your membership must be done by a majority 50+1 vote of active committee members. The committee chairperson shall declare the seat vacant and shall direct a letter to send to the tribal chairperson informing him or her of any actions. So basic committee bylaws. Article 5, which is honesty. The only thing that we changed in here was that sacred cultural items may be exempt from the policy and may include, but not limited to, the following: sacred medicines, ceremonial items, and food which are be used at cultural events. And this has to do with the gifting policy.
Okay. Rob has a question or comment, if you don't mind pausing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that we're being clear on the removal process and check with Aaron Schleihuber to see if that conflicts with any codes, because normally the board's the only one that can appoint and remove, but I wonder if we could do this by recommendation from the committee. like embed it in the bylaws that the committee can do it? Do we need that? Or can we just allow the committee to do it by approving the bylaws as it is?
Is anyone in legal helping you with these?
No.
I definitely don't mind them having the ability to, and I don't feel the need that they have to come back to the board, but if, I just want to make sure it's not conflicting with our codes.
I can't think of a reason not to allow this, Rob. Nothing's coming to mind, but we'll do a quick check just to make sure. We don't have a code that governs appointments or removals, so it's really at the board's discretion.
Can you read that?
Okay, no,
We'll circle back
I
to you
didn't know
once
if it
you,
was code or,
me look
I
at
didn't know if it was code or constitution that the board appoints and removes the or the committees.
Well,
So
that's what I'm thinking about, Rob. Just give me a second to look. I want to go from memory.
Hey, Aaron's gonna look and we'll keep
Okay.
going until then. Aaron?
Yep, sounds good. Thanks.
So there's a couple things in what he read is the reappointments, as I understand it, and Lana will know this, the reappointments, you still have to submit your 3 letters. We do have a board mandate that it has to be posted for 2 months, unless that was rescinded. And the board makes the appointments. I do think if we're looking at all committees right now, we should be able to allow for a default for a removal or a resignation, because if somebody's not coming, they should just be automatically off. The committee shouldn't have to vote on it, the board shouldn't have to vote on it. If you're not coming for whatever reason, if you have excused absences and you're notifying them, that's something different. But if you're just not coming, you should just be gone. So that could be automatic. But the way that Tyler just read it is the re-ups, you just do a letter and you're back on. And that isn't the way that other committees happen. You have to submit a letter, 3 letters, don't you?
Not all committees are like that, like enrollment. To get on that committee, they have to have the letter of intent and 3 recommendations, but the reappointments, you only need to do your letter. The committee sends the recommendation. So the enrollment committee already does it the way he's proposing to do it. And we did actually do you guys accepted a removal from a Unit 3 Elder Committee because they weren't coming to the meetings, so the committee voted in their bylaws. It says that they can do that, but you guys had to reaffirm it. So it still came back here for a vote, and that's the only ones that I can think of, the elder bylaws that are like that. And special needs enrollment is the only one that I remember right offhand that to be reappointed, you just need your letter.
So I'm comfortable having the reappointment. I know some board members complain about that. Oh, I know some board members complain about that. I'm comfortable with, if you're already on the committee, that means the board already made the decision to appoint you, and you're just re-upping for that seat. I'm fine with that. But I also think that this, if we're redoing these, let's not put people in a difficult position. If somebody is just not attending and they're not notifying, it should be automatic. That way the committee doesn't have to vote, because it's an uncomfortable position, right? Somebody's just not coming, whatever, they're blowing it off. That means you don't care enough to be there anymore. If you have a reason and you're calling and letting people know, that's different. So I think just that would be the easiest way to do it. Because the other thing is sometimes when people, the committee does recommend that they be removed, board members make out a political thing out of it and they'll vote no. And it's like, okay, well, why are you voting no? If they're not attending, they're not committed to it, it should be automatic. It shouldn't be a debate at that point.
One more thing with what you're saying, Aaron. there'd have to be some type of a process to let me at least know if somebody's removed, if you guys approve it that way. I maintain all of the committee vacancy lists, so I have to know who's getting appointed, even if it's a reappointment. I have to know who's being removed or who's just resigning and not re-upping, so.
Are we still following the board mandate? Are we still following the board mandate that we have to post vacancies? 2
Yes,
months?
I was reminded of that a few months after starting, that I didn't realize it was a thing.
Okay.
But we do it.
Aaron?
Rob, the answer to your question, the Constitution just states the board establishes the committees, but it's silent on how they're populated. So it's at the board's discretion how they want to handle that.
Okay, awesome. Then I'm okay with embedding this into their bylaws so that way it doesn't have to come back to the board, as long as they're given proper notice to Lana so she could follow through on the codes to post for 2 months.
Okay, Isaac. Actually, Tyler's got his hand up. Tyler, then Isaac. My apologies.
Well, yeah, just in response to that, like if we pass the bylaws at the board table, they become law, right? And the law dictates what authority they have. My one concern here is that members having 4 or more unexcused or excused absences during any 12-month period, I would think there would be, more of an impact for the unexcused absences and less for the excused absences if somebody has something going on in their life, for a couple months and a couple of special meetings are called and they're unable to attend. I don't know if that would be good. Also, the reappointment, I think as long as it comes back to the board for the reappointment, the written letter of intent should be fine. But also wanting to make sure that there's consistency, because you're bringing it down to a committee of 10 being equal men and women. But I would even suggest 12 trying to shoot for 2 per unit, plus 2 for at-large living anywhere, right? Just a thought in order to maintain parity across the tribe and our units and the people who aren't in our units. Just some of my thoughts.
Isaac.
So with I'm up for the housing commission, so you got to send 3 letters and a letter of support, 3 letters of support and a letter of intent. Personally, I filled the Unit 5 seat, so I'm just going to step down because I think that should go to a Unit 5 person. But my concern is with the volunteers, why do we force them to go through all this crap again? I mean, if we didn't want them there, then we should have just not approved them the first time, but that's why I got off the health committee after 4 years, right? It was the same reason. I ain't going to go through the hassle, just be a volunteer, so.
Lana.
Yeah, just to add a little bit to that, Isaac, and it doesn't matter to me either way, but one of the reasons that we did it is because there was a lot of complaints that people were getting on the committee, doing a good job, of course, but that nobody else had an opportunity to get on it, no other tribal members. So that's one of the reasons we did it. How we move forward in the future is it doesn't matter to me, but I just wanted to let you know that's one of the reasons, because there was complaints that no one else could be active on a committee, and once someone got on there, they just stayed on there. So for what it's worth, that was one of the reasons it happened. That's it.
Okay, we can keep going, Tyler.
So we talked about Article 5. Do you want me to re-go over it since we jumped back on the reappointments?
If you think it's necessary.
As long as nobody has any objections, I'll
Anyone
move
want to go
forward.
through it again? Okay, we can skip that area then.
Perfect. So we're down to Article 6, which will be the term of office, will be 4 years. We took out the staggered in the 4 years because we're all fresh and new on this committee, all coming in at the same time. So it's kind of hard to stagger one another if we're all being appointed at the same time. We figured eventually it will just naturally stagger itself out. So instead of having that language in there, we were trying to discuss, certain people having 2-year terms and certain people having 4. We just figured, well, let's just keep it at the 4-year, and it will naturally stagger itself out. And so I think that's all for that one. And then the only thing on the last one was we put Article 7 in there. It's the same information that was on the original bylaws in 2015, or the second set of bylaws in 2015.
All right, I appreciate it. Any questions on the last article, guys? Any comments? Okay, anything else to go over with this, Tyler?
No, I think the only thing that, a couple of questions that we have as a committee is if we are allowing everybody to come in, is there a budget for us? to reimburse for mileage. That's a big question that the committee has. And the other one is, how is the communication between us as a committee and the board? Like I guess exactly, we're trying to figure out exactly what our job is as the committee. As being cultural advisors to the board, that's kind of broad, and we don't really know what our deliverables are.
So before I call on the board, it seems like you'd have to get before us every so often. So would you be opposed to coming here quarterly, twice a year, something like that? I don't know. I'm just throwing out
Yeah, no,
timeframes.
I don't think any of us have any objection to that at all.
Okay. I call on the board. Aaron, then Kim.
So I'm surprised to hear that they don't have a travel budget. They used to, so I don't know if that changed somewhere along the line, or maybe somebody's just not informing you that there's a travel budget. We used to budget for committee members for travel because when we had a full committee, we've only ever had a full committee like a little narrow window of time. People used to travel from other units, and we would cover their travel. So maybe Jess could check to see if there is a travel budget. So that would be number one. Number two, I'm really happy with where we are with culture right now and with the work that you're doing. The work that the committee is charged with, when we first put it together, because I was here then and so was Kathy, and we were both on the same page, that at the time we were spending a whole lot of money on culture and doing a lot of disparate things, but everybody was doing their own thing and none of it was coming together. And some of it was cultural, supposedly our culture, but none of us really kind of recognized that stuff. So it wasn't for them to be the cultural police or anything like that, because that's not our way, but it was to be a resource to work hand in hand and in tandem with the cultural division, with education, with YEA, and not only those obvious areas, but with our tribe as an organization, so that we could be a tribe, that we wouldn't lose sight of who we are as Indian people. So that is what the original purpose was, and I think that is still the purpose. So whatever frequency we meet with them, the better, so that they can be advisory, so that we can be a tribe and not lose sight of who we are as a people. So.
Hey, Kim, then Tyler.
Aaron just pretty much said everything I was going to say. I'm surprised there's not a budget for the cultural committee for travel, because every other committee I know of has got it for people coming from, a distance.
And there might be, we're all new, so there may be one, and we just don't know the
Okay.
ins and out of it, because all of us are all brand new. We're coming in here, we just don't know.
Jessica will let you know.
Okay, Tyler, then Rob.
So, yeah, I would agree that there should be some kind of budget for you guys, but then, again, within limitations, especially since you're opening up to at-large, are we going to fly somebody in from California? Is somebody going to drive in from out of state? What are our limitations and expectations for that? Because that could get pretty costly pretty quickly. But I'm supportive of you guys. What are some other areas where we can be supportive of you? For instance, there is a trail signage project happening in Marquette that they would like to have the tribe involved in. So far, I've been involved with them. Is this something I can assign to you guys or send over to you guys as a committee, or is that outside of your realm? Are you just meeting to discuss cultural activities as a whole for the tribe?
I don't believe that that's outside of the realm of the committee, but I would also refer to our language program first. And I believe I know what you're talking about, Tyler, because I'm on those email chains too. And I would just always refer to our employees first. I know I sit here and I'm a cultural employee and I'm sitting on this committee, but I made it very clear with the committee members that when I'm here, I'm not an employee. So I would always give the opportunity to our employees that are employed in those departments, and there is opportunity to work together with anything that's cultural as a cultural committee. I know Wayne is very, very good in the language. Laura's good in the language. So those are prime examples of folks that are invaluable to us. And Wayne lives in Minnesota, so to be able to have his expertise and his viewpoint is invaluable, really.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that. Is there anything else that we can do to help you other than passing your bylaws?
As of right now, no, I don't think so. I think this was the first step for us as a committee, and then we were going to get together after the bylaws were passed and kind of figure out what we're going to do as a committee and where we stand.
All right, thank you.
Rob, then Laura.
So I just want to make sure we're clear in drawing the line between the cultural division of the tribe and the cultural committee, whereas the committee is tasked with serving as an advisor to the board. So I think we could defer things to them from workshops or anything that has to do with legislation that may affect culture. I think that's where we go to the culture committee and say, we need your expertise in making sure that we're passing legislation in alignment with our cultural values. I think assigning them tasks, we'll have to be careful on that. Does that go to our culture division, the appropriate avenue, or to our culture committee where we need, some kind of opinion or best practice in what our culture committee and culture leaders believe is the way that things should be implemented. As far as the travel budget, I think we need to put our culture on a pedestal as far as that we need to honor our culture within our communities the same way that we honor travel for other things. For instance, you said it could get pricey pretty quick, but also board taking trips to Vegas and not bringing anything back is also getting pretty pricey too. So, I think we need to determine on what are they traveling in for, and is it going to make an impact on the way that we operate culture? And if so, I don't mind flying people in from California if that's what it takes. That's a little more important than 90% of the board travel budget to me. So I would say that, and then also, in drawing the line there on a budget, I think that we do have, a couple $100,000 per year that needs to be placed into culture, and it's the culture enhancement fund, where I think it would be better managed from culture anyways, but that would be a culture division thing, not culture committee. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on what the culture committee needs to do and what the culture division needs to do, and make sure that those lines are there, because I don't want to put employees in a position to where they're feeling like they're crossing the line in any way, sitting on a committee and serving as an employee, whereas the employees of the culture division have a chain of command. The committee answers directly to the board, so I don't want the chain of command to interfere with what the committee does, if that makes sense.
Okay, Laura.
Okay, I figured out how to raise my hand. So as far as the budget goes too, I know that one of the other concerns that the committee brought up was about having a Zoom license. So travel is important because, yeah, we do have Wayne who lives in Minnesota. We use Zoom all the time to bring him in. But our plan as a committee, of course, is to have these meetings open. So people can come in and talk with us, and Zoom is a big part of that. And right now, we're running on those free 45-minute trials of Zoom, so that's something that we wanted to bring up to make sure that was covered, or find out what we could do to get a license for that. And then next, I think Rob kind of hit on the other thing I was going to bring up, was making sure that our role was defined as separate from culture division, even though culture division are, they can serve as advisory members. But also, and I've heard this mentioned about us as a committee not policing things with culture. We're not here to tell anybody what to do. we're here as helpers, like we're a committee of helpers. And that's another thing, you know, in our bylaws, it talks about, you know, we may talk other, you know, advisors, because as a committee, and I know, like, I can speak for myself, I don't have all the answers, and I frequently have to go ask my teachers and my helpers. So we're not know-it-all experts, we're not police, we're not any kind of authority, we're just helpers. So I wanted to bring that up.
Okay, I appreciate it, Laura. Tyler?
No, I just want to say I appreciate Laura for bringing up that point. I think all of our committees should have access to a Zoom license at this point in time. You know, with the executive members being able to schedule meetings on their own. So I don't know if the board would be opposed to that. I mean, that's one that makes sense. As far as like the open meetings though, the intent was to have them accessible. Like, I think the only people that should be participating in the committee are the actual committee members though. There's a lot of gray area in that where I think a lot of departments aren't understanding the intent behind that.
All right. Jess, could you work with him to try to get a budget? And could you also resolve the Zoom issue as well? Get him licensed and everything? That way members of this committee can, you know, appear remotely and they're not using free trials? Okay, I appreciate that. So work with her on a budget, Tyler, something within reason, and we'll get it passed for you, okay? Anything else to cover? Okay, so implement the proposed changes that you think would work best for your committee. Come on back for us to do one more reading of it, and then we'll get on an agenda to vote on, okay? All right, thank you, appreciate it.
Also, make sure legal has a chance to review it.
Can you guys look at it? Yep. I appreciate it, thank you. All right, so we're gonna circle back around and cover the casino's executive reports. So this is proprietary, so this will be closed, and I will get them here. Just give me a couple minutes.
The cultural one was closed.
It wasn't, we're open, we're on.
Oh, because I don't think Janet knew.
Oh, no.
That's okay.
The agenda doesn't say closed.
Okay, good.
It does not. It's open.
Awkward, given a PowerPoint sitting down, but I'm usually, have like lots of antics.
Did you have to do a defense? Did you have to?
Oh, yeah, yeah. At that point, it was like I was transitioning like positions. We're like doing all this stuff. Like, it was like, I got it done. I just went in and pounded it out. I will say, I forgot that they were going to. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time. I think this presentation is sort of long overdue. This project is really an extension of the work we've been doing with the Forest Service for a long time. So I'm going to give you, but I feel like I've never actually given you guys I've given this presentation, or what I call our Ishkode talk, over 30 times now. We've won national awards for it. We've done all sorts of things, but I've never sat in this room with you guys and sort of given you the sort of story behind a lot of that work. And so, I'm going to take that opportunity and give you a little bit of background and sort of define some of these terms that that are really jargony, but we throw them around and try to convince you guys that those are important things for us to be paying attention to. So what we did is, I'll just sort of give you the logistics of why we're sitting here right now talking about this new project. This is sort of the result of a lot of years of conversations with my colleagues at other, mostly federal agencies, about what it would look like to truly use good decision science, center Anishinaabe perspectives in land management, and really live up to those trust responsibilities that these federal agencies have to not just to Sioux tribe, but to all the tribes, but can't seem to help but fumble over implementing those. And, and especially under the Biden administration, there were a lot of directives that came out that said that these agencies should use indigenous knowledges and all sorts of things like that, but they have no idea how to do that and what that means. There's also these existing regulations on the book that they have to use certain decision science processes, and again, they seem to fumble over doing that. And so largely what we're trying to do with Seeker is position ourselves so that we're the ones who know how to do that stuff, and we'd be happy to come and help the federal government make decisions about how to manage their land. And so this immediate project came out of about a year-long discussion about, there was some bipartisan infrastructure law funding that came down to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They had $25 million to build resilience in refuges in this region, and they really didn't have a good plan on how to spend it. And so I had this long conversation with a colleague named Brad Potter, who I'll sort of give him some credit at the end. He's the Assistant Regional Director for Science Applications with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And he said, well, let's frame this out. What would it look like to do a big project? And so the other side of this too is, as we were having all this success with our U.S. Forest Service partners, we were getting other agencies like Fish and Wildlife Service, National Park Service, and MDNR, and I'm missing one there. I guess other national forests saying, hey, we would like you to come do this same thing with us. But as you guys have seen, that's a huge undertaking. We have like 6 people, right? Like, we can't just like infinitely expand this. And so my response to them was kind of like, okay, but it's not going to be free. We'd be happy to do this work and facilitate it, but it's going to cost money and we're going to need real resources to do that. So I want to talk just a little bit and remind you about what the, what's the mission of the Consortium for Cooperative Ecological Resilience. In 2023, you guys passed a resolution authorizing us to go seek other MOUs with agencies and universities, and we've done that, and I think it's going really well. But I want to bring this back to talk about the mission of Seeker, as we call it. First and sort of foremost, it's to strengthen and add capacity to tribal natural resource agencies, primarily Sioux Tribe. But if other tribal agencies gain some benefit from the work we're doing, I think that's great too. But really to foster collaborations with universities and agencies. And I think this project that I'm going to describe, I think will sort of highlight a lot of these things. The second objective is to really emphasize applied management around adaptive co-management that sort of centers both Anishinaabe knowledge and perspectives as well as Western science perspectives, and really create pathways for tribal graduate students to really become very competent practitioners in sort of this new world of how to, not just how do we do good science, but how do we actually use that to make good decisions. And that's really what adaptive management, adaptive co-management really is about. It's that science of making decisions, not about how do you count wolves or snowshoe hares or fish, but how do you use that to make a better decision and iteratively improve that decision over time. So this project that I'll give you sort of the summary of what we propose to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which is to develop a project that aimed to build resilience in hemiboreal forest ecosystems, and put a pin in that term because I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then really think about how do we get away from this idea that it's the state and the tribes and the feds arguing over how many bears, how many fish, all these things we get, and how do we focus on those bigger objectives, which are how do we manage these large landscapes together that are incredibly complex? There's all these different regulations and all these different bookends for each agency to make decisions, but almost across the board, those agencies have a responsibility to engage tribes, and through federal regulations have a responsibility to do that meaningfully. But I don't think that's not the federal government's realm to own. I think that provides us the opportunity to build that capacity and to design these projects to facilitate that work. So why do I talk about hemiboreal forests? You see this term in all sorts of stuff that the Natural Resource Division puts out, and all sorts of stuff that that Seeker is focused on. So hemiboreal forests are really, you have the temperate forest biomes, which are like deciduous dominated forests, your leaves fall off the trees, your hardwoods and all that stuff that's really southern United States dominated. And to the north you have these boreal forests, which are largely cold tolerant and conifer dominated forests. Well, we live in this, and I'll show this graphically, but the homelands of the Great Lakes and Anishinaabe are really in that ecotone, that transition zone between temperate forests to the south and boreal forests to the north. And peatland ecosystems, which include forested systems like our northern white cedar swamps, as well as these open peat systems like the bogs and muskegs that sort of we all know around the Upper Peninsula are major components of these. Wildfire is a major driver in hemiboreal and boreal forest ecosystems. And globally, this is the region that is warming faster than any other region on the planet. We're seeing more intense climate dynamics, more intense species change than anywhere else. And so when we talk about climate change, there's often a lot of focus on coasts and marginalized communities in the global equatorial regions. But the fact of the matter is we're actually seeing more forest impacts here than there anywhere else on the landscape. And I'll demonstrate with a series of graphics here how it is those fires, those forests, those really are part and parcel to Anishinaabe culture. And all of these important species, and I'll demonstrate, this is the place they call home, and we're actually watching those things disappear right before our eyes. So I'm just going to walk you through a series of maps. This dark gray stuff here is the boreal forest biome. This white stuff to the south, or lightest gray, is a temperate forest. And this band right through here, through the middle, is the hemiboreal forest region. I always like to put, these purple blobs right here are the entire breeding range of the Kirtland warbler, or the jack pine warbler. Lots of folks probably know about that. It's been a threatened and endangered species for a long time. But what folks maybe don't understand about the jack pine warbler is that they only breed in 6 to 15-year-old jack pine. Jack pine is a serotinous cone-bearing species, which means it needs fire to actually release the seeds and germinate. And so jack pine, the green blob I just put up there is the entire range of jack pine. And so you can see Kirtland warbler are very tightly linked to this range of jack pine. And you're probably wondering why I'm talking about Kirtland warblers, but I'll get to that in a minute. But I want to just sort of continue on this line of thinking, and so I just put up the entire ceded territories of the northern Great Lakes Ojibwe communities, right? So you'll recognize the 1836 here in the middle, but then the western ones, and you can see this tight congruence between the range of these boreal species that exist at the southern extent of their range and the places that Anishinaabe people during treaty making era were like, well, these are our lands that we will cede. And then to sort of just continue down this line, this is the entire range of snowshoe hare. This, I just threw up American marten, northern white cedar, red pine. All of these species exist right here at the intersection of the Great Lakes and the hemiboreal forest region. And these are all the species that make up the creation story, right? These are incredibly important species to Anishinaabe communities, which I know I don't have to tell you guys about, but I think it's important to the story and why we're doing this work. So I'm going to circle back to this original figure, and if we think about the migration story, you know, the Ojibwe, the Anishinaabe people moved from the St. Lawrence Seaway. They followed that hemiboreal zone to the place where the food grows in the water, which, you know, lots of folks talk about as wild rice. Being that we're from Sioux Tribe, I always like to joke that's because they couldn't fish, because that food also grows on the water, correct? But so to sort of put a point on this and why I'm talking about fire and a fire, species that rely on fire to regenerate, I think it's not just that the Anishinaabe people moved here because these ecosystems were here. I think the converse is absolutely true. These ecosystems that are here because of the intense footprint of Anishinaabe use of fire across the Great Lakes Basin for thousands of years before colonization. And so these two, what we call cookies right here, are from a dendrochronology study that some of our partners of the Forest Service worked on, and really was the precursor to the Ishkode project. I know you can't see these very well, but these white marks right here are actual, those are the fires that were documented in the tree rings. If you know where Betchler Marsh is, these were cut out of Pine Islands out in Betchler Marsh. And so these, this one on the right here, I think goes back to 1542, and this one's back into the 1500s. So these are very long fire histories that we've reconstructed. And what we've seen is that before European contact, these landscapes were burning every 6 to 30 years. And so back to the Kirtland warbler, it's not a mistake that we have a bird that evolved to live exactly in these ecosystems that Anishinaabe people were very much responsible for restoring, for maintaining on the landscape. So that fire is an incredibly important driver, and that's why we have focused so much on thinking about how do we help change the way that we do fire management on these forests, so that it's not just protecting homes and fuels. We can actually achieve ecological outcomes while we're doing that work. So to sort of talk about what these look like across the landscape, the dark gray stuff are the peatland ecosystems, and I know you can't see those or read them very well. I wasn't intending for it. Just look at the big picture. You know, you can see the Upper Peninsula, those peatland ecosystems as you go north become more and more common. And the red stuff are our fire-prone ecosystems across the landscape. And so these are the places that we're really focused on. How do we maintain these places in the face of really rapidly changing climate? Western agencies are very much focused on picking climate winners and climate losers. Well, I can tell you all the boreal forest communities are climate losers. But that's not a reason not to think about how do we maintain them on the landscape. And in particular, in places like the eastern UP, where there's this strong influence of lakes and water, we have an opportunity to actually build resilience in those communities and manage them into the future and maintain species like snowshoe hare on the landscape, so future generations can not just hear the Ottazokanan or the creation stories about snowshoe hare and waboos, but they can actually still go out and see them. So, I'm going to transition to talk about what the heck is adaptive decision support and adaptive management, and what the heck am I talking about when I say that stuff. Adaptive management is just a form of structured decision-making. Structured decision-making is born out of the business world, where businesses rely on understanding risk and uncertainty. And what we're trying to do, this is not we didn't come up with this, we have an opening here to do something better than the feds do that they actually have to do. So, adaptive management is a form of structured decision-making that's really useful when you have this combination of ecological uncertainty. In other words, you can cut trees, but you don't really know what's going to come back. You can do habitat work in the name of any given species, but you don't really understand, you don't know for sure that what we think is good snowshoe hare habitat and what we can do to make it is actually going to create good snowshoe hare habitat, because these systems are much more complex than we can wrap our heads around. It also is really useful when you have changing conditions, so like things are always changing. And then I think another thing that's really important about adaptive management is it's really useful when you have a need to make optimal decisions. In that case I just laid out about climate change and the impact on these forest ecosystems here, I think lays out that particular scenario where adaptive management is a really useful framework. As a central tenet of adaptive management and structured decision-making, it requires inclusiveness. In other words, if the feds say they're going to use adaptive management, that requires that they bring us to the table. And because of that, I think it provides a very useful framework for us to work from when we talk about the co-stewardship and co-management of federal lands, as well as culturally important species and ecosystems. And I think there's this other, while I don't think you can take Anishinaabe and other indigenous knowledges and directly input them into Western science-based processes, Anishinaabe, these knowledges are inherently adaptive. They're born out through thousands of years of intense engagement with ecosystems. And so I think they're a framework where you can work from multiple different worldviews at one time. So this project that we proposed to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service really had sort of these 4 key objectives. Sorry, I apologize. I have a thing on my screen that I can't seem to get rid of, and it's blocking what I'm looking at here, if you're wondering what I'm doing. We sought to write a proposal to build capacity for both tribal and federal staff to actually do this work together and collaboratively, to think about how do we manage these interjurisdictional, multi-jurisdictional landscapes. We're going to develop adaptive management frameworks and the actual plans to implement those frameworks for some very key, important ecological communities, and to develop strategies to engage tribal communities while we're doing that. We're going to focus on training this next generation of conservationists with a focus on tribal graduate students, with the idea that we can build all these plans, but forests change way slower than we do. And the stuff that we're doing right now, it's some generation of future scientists that are actually going to see the results of these. So it's critical that we train people that are young professionals in the work that we're doing, so that they can take, they can step into this work after we're all gone and retired and actually understand what we're trying to do with all of this work. And then really focus on strengthening the interagency relationships across all these like shared ecosystems where we all have a vested interest in having good outcomes. And I think this is really critical because, if you think about what's going on with these consent decrees, we spend so much time talking about how many fish or how many bears we get to harvest versus what they get. We totally miss the big picture that we can all work together to actually, manage these ecosystems in a way that there's enough for all the parties to have. And so we need to really start thinking about what does that look like into the future. And I would argue that adaptive management and the work that we're proposing and the stuff that we're getting funded to do really sets us up to understand that and to make, partners out of people we've been fighting with for a long time. So methodologically, what we've proposed is sort of a 2 or a 3-part process that we're going to, actually provide on the ground training on structured decision-making and co-management, and even what does it look like to work with tribes in a meaningful way. We're going to develop decision support tools and adaptive management frameworks for some key ecosystems. And then we're going to collaborate through engagement. We're going to sort of have these series of workshops where we're bringing these groups together over the course of 3 years. Again, I'm not intending that you see this, but I just wanted to show this because there is an actual plan for how this rolls out over the course of 3 years, and there's sort of 3 teams. There's our steering committees, which are the principals of the parties that we're going to invite to participate in this planning process. There's the project teams, which are sort of like the people that work for these agencies that are actually making decisions about how we manage these ecosystems on the ground. And then we've built a pretty robust team of academic and subject matter support experts that are going to work with us to actually support this work. With the idea at the end of this, we're going to have some actual monitoring plans, implementation plans, and community engagement. But I would argue that while those ecosystem management objectives are really important, I think the more important thing is, can we demonstrate what it looks like for the tribes to actually invite the state and the feds to our table and say, would you like to participate in our planning process? Because we're going to leverage the authorities we have over the lands that you manage to actually throw, for lack of a better term, throw the weight we have around in the room. And I think we have broad buy-in, and I think folks are going to come to the table, and I think we have a really cool opportunity to just flip this this process where we manage everything under the consent decree through legal fights on its head, and we can demonstrate it in these ecosystems that aren't particularly ecologic or economically valuable, and so we can demonstrate a process here. So to get to the list of folks that we are going to invite to participate in this process, it includes the Huron-Manistee National Forest and the Hiawatha National Forest, the Seney National Wildlife Refuge, Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore, Michigan DNR Wildlife and Forest Resource Division, and then all of the 5 Cora tribes will be invited to sit at the table. Sioux Tribe kind of gets 2 votes at the table because I get to facilitate and manage the project. So not that anybody will be, quote, voting on anything or anything of that nature, but so I think this is a really unique project. I have never seen a project that pulls this many people in, that's led by a tribe and brings in the actual technical support to do a really rigorous job developing some management plans for these ecosystems. Like I said, it's a 3-year project, and so just to run through what that timeline looks like, we're kind of in phase 1 right now, assuming that you guys approve this project on Tuesday night and the budgets associated with it. But so this year we're working to define engage those groups, define the charter, and actually set up the stage for what decisions we're trying to make about these ecosystems. And then quarter 2 through 4 in 2025, we're going to spend some time with these groups and actually sketch out what this process looks like and sort of run through what we would call a rapid prototype, where we identify the key uncertainties that really stop us from making good land management decisions. in quarter 1 through 4 of 2026, we're going to actually implement this whole decision-making process that will be probably 6 to 8 in-person multi-day workshops with all of these agencies and actually work through a very rigorous decision science model of what it looks like and have a whole bunch of academic support and research support behind that work. And then in quarter 4, or 1 through 4 of 2027, we'll actually write and develop the monitoring protocols, implementation plans, and develop community engagement plans with the tribal partner agencies that we're working with. And so to move on to what that budget looks like, it's a pretty robust funding package. I actually asked for $3 million, and they said they could only do 1.4, and I said, sold, we can write a project for that. And so balled up in this project here in Seeker, what this would provide is a full-time, like a biologist 2-level position in Seeker. That would be full-time for the 3 years. It would cover 60% of my wages over the course of this project. And then it would have, as Tyler asked earlier today, it will have a pretty robust funding package to really try to recruit and support tribal graduate students. And obviously, there's no guarantee that we can recruit students that are tribal into these graduate positions, but we would try like hell to make sure that, working with our education department and really try to lay out the red carpet for somebody who wants to be able to walk into I think what's a really robust and important research project over the course of the 3 years. In the handout that you guys have in your packet, if you want to dig into these budget details, there's every single, each one of these lines has a subcategory in an appendix if you want to look at how all that budget is laid out. And then, from there, what our outcomes and deliverables are really, first and foremost, in enhanced capacity to do co-stewardship work and structured decision-making and adaptive management work and position ourselves as the people that can actually pull that off across all these agencies. We're going to develop adaptive management plans, monitoring plans, and community engagement plans, which I've already said. We're going to do a lot of writing in peer-reviewed journals about this process and the work. And then, as I said, there's 2 PhD assistantships in there, and then, I think some real legitimate pathways to engage some tribal students in what could be something that sets the course of somebody's career in a very cool way. With that, I figured I would pause and see if anybody has any questions. I know I just rattled through a whole bunch of stuff.
Are there any questions from anyone on the board at this point in the presentation? No questions so far, Eric.
Okay.
We have 2 now.
Okay.
It's not a
Isaac,
question,
then
it's
Aaron.
just a comment. I would just want to thank you for the amount of effort and work you put into this and the vision you got going forward. I can't wait to see the results.
Aaron.
All right, so I hate to throw cold water here, although there's snow up there.
Yeah.
The funding sources are all frozen right now. Your program is one that's going to be impacted. Is it just too early? We have any idea? Can Mary help us to figure out? And then, more importantly, rather than sitting back like victims, what can we do to communicate to members of Congress of the importance of this? Another thing is, a lot of people think this is all partisan stuff, but last time Trump took office, he had mandates directed not to say climate change, not to say resilience. There's certain words that are throughout everything that you just presented on that are now no-nos. So are you looking at how to repackage it so it doesn't sound so liberal?
Absolutely. And in fact, it's kind of funny if you think about it that, adaptive management it's a business model, right? It's not born out of the natural resource world. That's natural resource world saying, well, how does the stock market deal with insane amounts of uncertainty when you got to make $1 billion decision tomorrow? How do you, and these are the tools that they use essentially to make those decisions. And I think that, the Trump administration, first and foremost, wants our forests to work for us and make money. And I don't think you do that by, if you have a mandate to cut 1 trillion trees, well, you want to make sure you cut the right 1 trillion trees, right? And, and so I think that, we have broad support and buy-in across the agencies, but we also have the state of Michigan, who I just met with the assistant chief of the wildlife division this morning, who is very enthusiastic about this. And so I absolutely think that, this is good forest management and wildlife management practice. And I don't think that there's a Republican who would say, no, we don't want to reap the most benefit out of the resources we exploit. And, you can like haggle about the term climate change all you want. The fact of the matter is that every Fortune 500 company has commercial forest land on their books because there's no better investment. And every single one of them is considering climate change as a risk factor to their forest investment. And so I think the challenge is how do we reframe it so that it's not about, doing like, it's not about the conservation. This is economic policy, and anybody who looks at it any different, I think, is they don't understand the economics of cutting trees. So.
The other thing I want to add is at different times we have not grabbed the opportunities that were offered us. One time the U.S. Forest Service offered us large tracts of land. This is before you came on, and our tribe just said no, we're not interested. Basically gifting us large tracts of U.S. Forest Service lands. I have a sense that that's coming again. And so if we want to be strategic across our treaty and service area and treaty area, ceded territory, to see what lands would be potentially valuable for our benefit, for hunting, gathering, and fishing, but also potentially for selective cuts. So maybe just kind of getting a plan ready, because I have a sense that they're going to be looking at divesting a federal Forest Service under the Vance plan in order to save money in the federal budget.
That is absolutely, I think, on both Robin and it's on our mind, and I think we have some pretty exciting projects that are in the works right now. Which you'll be hearing about in the near future, which I think that's what we're sort of focused on is like, if we think about a large landscape scale strategic conservation plan and what is, we actually have a master's cohort starting at U of M right now in the SEAS program that is focused on doing a better job of accounting for what tribal land ownership looks like. And I think that's really key because right now, if you ask the federal government, they say the tribes collectively in the U.S. own 2% of the land, but that's only true if you don't count the existing codified treaty rights that exist across millions and millions of acres of land. And so we're really working to first understand how do we account for what the sort of property right across those landscapes look like, but then also how do we then think about that spectrum of ownership. And this co-management stuff that's like one spectrum of the ownership, but I think the compelling conservation story that the tribe has leads us right down the path of, every single piece of commercial forest land in the state of Michigan is for sale. You just have to have the funders that help you buy it. And I think we're quickly learning how to connect with those people. And I also think if we can demonstrate that there is an existing property right across these lands, that I think we can help leverage that to make us first in line to receive those lands. So, sorry, there's a long answer to a question, but.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, we can keep going to the presentation, Eric.
That was sort of the end of the whole thing, although I did want to first sort of acknowledge some people here that were very instrumental in working through this. Robin Clark, obviously, she's one of the principal investigators on this proposal. But then I mentioned Brad Potter, who's the Deputy Assistant Regional Director for Science Applications with the Fish and Wildlife Service, who is actually the one who, over the course of the year, cooked this up with me and was the one who actually, when stuff was hitting the fan, he was the one that was like, we need to move this in 3 days. And so that was that happened quick, and it wouldn't have happened without him. And then Carl Malcolm, who's the Assistant Regional Director for Renewable Resources at the U.S. Forest Service, who has really been instrumental in the sort of companion funding to all of this work, which is all the bill funding we've got from the U.S. Forest Service. He has been a very key advocate and probably is the one who's responsible for us getting the RISE Award and all of that other stuff inside of the Forest Service. And last but not least, I think I should thank Christine, because she has put up with me in our direct reports meetings going on and on and on about this stuff for a year. And when it came time to actually need to figure out how to move money in 3 days, she was there to support it and really helped shepherd that through. So with that, I did want to point out that when we talk about seeker, it's really hard for me to, it's become this constellation of people that we're, engaged in research with. So this Hemi-Boreal Forest Co-Management Research Team, now we have over 35 partners from all sorts of different agencies and universities that are all working on pieces of this. And I don't think, this is not, while I'm the spokesperson and maybe the project manager here, it is certainly a lot of people with their hands in this that are really helping move it forward, so.
All right, well, we appreciate it, Eric. You guys are doing a great job in your department. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, so I will say that, I guess just to sort of, to circle back to the logistics of the budgets we presented this morning. So you obviously saw how some of this money is reflected in there. We're just trying to get the budgets established so we can sort of formally launch the project. And because we had to move the money quickly, we used Christine's delegated authority to move that through. And so by accepting this budget, and on Tuesday, it will sort of formally accept the project as well. And so I'm really excited, and I think this is going to be awesome in 3 years. So
Looking forward to it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll move on to the last item on today's agenda, which is Human Resources Policy Review Group. So we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll tackle that and be done for the day. The last item that we have up for today, it is a policy review work group. Legal and government HR worked on this, so whenever you guys are ready.
Hi, thank you. We're ready to start here. I'll give a little history of why we're back today and discussing the new work group in front of you, which is your Legal and Governmental HR Department Policy Review Work Group. As I kick off the meeting, I just want to say thank you to those sitting next to me. This is your work group in front of you that do a lot of hard work and due diligence behind the scenes. So let me go ahead and thank Ashley Samuelson over here. She is our strong administrative lady. She takes a lot of notes in keeping and all of that. Big part of the work group. Jeff Rogers, our employee relations supervisor, myself, Cheryl Nolan, HR director, and then these two gentlemen that have been putting up with us is Ryan and Josh with the legal department. So this is your work group in front of you for the policy review group. What we had done is just a recap real quick. HR had come in front of the board on November 17th, I believe. We were looking at securing the RFP to contract out to an external vendor to rewrite our existing policy and procedure manuals. After a lengthy discussion and obviously feedback from the board too, we decided to handle it internally and form this work group, work closely HR and legal together to take this project and come back in front of you today and give you our strategic plan that we plan for this year, obviously with your feedback on how to address these policies and procedures with updates, edits, and moving forward effectively, right? So I will list off here in a moment our strategic plan, the basic functions of what this work group has come up with, obviously answer any questions, and look at what other feedback or that you may have for us as we start to prep policies and procedures that we have selected to come back to you at the end of the first quarter, okay? In front of you, you should have the agenda, a condensed agenda for today for the policy that this policy review work group has put together. Keep in mind, under the governmental and EDC policies and procedure manuals, there are 93 individual policies per manual. You will see in front of you for the first quarter of this year, what we have prepped at our prior work group meetings is we would like for the first quarter, you will see those policies that are identified as priorities during the first quarter. Now, this may shift a little bit based on perhaps the board request or something may come up, but this in front of you for the first quarter are the records that have been on hand at the HR department, including with the legal team. These are identified as priority policies to come back to you in the first quarter for sure. Is there any questions with those policies on that list or any feedback at that point to come back to you? First quarter.
Any questions, guys? Not seeing any hands, Cheryl. You can keep
Okay.
going.
With that.
Sorry, I couldn't get my hand raised.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Tyler.
So I think addressing first quarter based on policies, we did have a discussion earlier. I think we need to immediately address anything that is interfering with the hiring process and the speed in which we hire. I'm not sure if what's on the list here is addressing those in the first quarter, so maybe we can have that discussion, but I think those need to be priority at this point.
Okay. Noted. Noted. Thank you, Tyler.
Tyler, that made me think of something that we wanted to get feedback on. So as we're talking through this plan, the board can think of how they would prefer us to approach it. The approach we've took initially is kind of the same as we would if it was like if we had done the RFP and a consultant was doing it. We've identified our priorities with the goal of having one squeaky new clean policy at the end of the year for you to adopt. Certainly, if the board wants to adopt them, for lack of a better term, in piecemeal, as we go along throughout the year, priorities and change them, that's something we wanted to get feedback on. One of the things that we've noticed over the past few decades is as we update policies, we don't always do a good job as a tribe of going through all the other policies that update affected. And so what we're trying to avoid is too much of a piecemeal approach that might just cause the more convoluted policies that we have, but that's something we wanted to get feedback on. So if the board, as a consensus, does have priorities for us to focus on and adopt first, we will certainly do that and then bring them to the board. And then as we go along this year, I'm very confident in our team that we'll go through and we'll be able to flag and adopt and change any other policies that do touch on those. It's something that we haven't done a good job on over the decades, but it's something that we're committed to with this policy group. I just wanted to flag that as one of the feedback we're going to ask today before we leave this afternoon, how the board wants to approach us bringing you policies for adoption. So.
All right, Ryan, thanks for that. I appreciate it. I don't know exactly what policies need to be changed immediately, though. So without going into great detail, because I believe we're in closed, we are aware that several policies.
Stop.
No, we were in closed earlier when we had this discussion. So I'm going to be careful how I phrase it, but we are aware of several policies that are delaying the hiring process. And those need to be identified to us and brought forward to us immediately if that is the case. Because if that is the consistent reason or excuse that these hiring processes are slow on the governmental side, especially, then we need to address those as priority. So I'm pretty sure there was consensus amongst everybody, when we were talking about this, but we know that things need to move faster in today's world, and they're just not. So I think we need to prioritize those policies that may be impacting your immediate day-to-day hiring practices.
And that's fair, Tyler, and I apologize. I wasn't there for the closed session, so I don't know what the consensus was. And without going into detail, if at some point we can get that information to us so we can work on prioritizing that list. I wasn't privy to that conversation.
So we can have Lana fill you guys in with it, but basically, in a nutshell, we want to start expediting the process to hire people. Doesn't mean we want to rush job and hire the wrong people, but we want to identify any barriers that are causing things to be delayed.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there's any policies to where, we need to streamline something, get rid of some red tape, if it's getting in the way, it's your job to come forward and let us know. Okay, Aaron.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think you guys will be best to kind of tell us what that is, actually. Mike? She should be best at telling us what that is. The other thing is, I think that your review needs to be broader than the policy, because the maddening thing is board directives that don't result in a vote, but from time to time in closed session, board members, give an edict out and, a decree from here on down, this is how we shall do it. And one of those in the past has been all positions have to be posted and no interviews for 30 days. That's one of them. I don't believe that's a policy anywhere. There's back and forth about who we interview in the first round or the second round. When I came back to office, Christine was 100% confident that the board had directed that everybody get hired at the min. And when we looked closely, actually, she came back after I came back, so we were told that by members of the board, but we looked carefully at everything, and we couldn't find it in any board records. It was just made up. Somebody just made it up off the top of their head. But we had been following that direction because we were told to for several years in the budget appropriations process. We followed it for that because we budgeted at the min. So in addition to the policies that need to be changed, what other sort of practices over the years has HR been ordered to follow without any vote of the board of directors that impedes your ability to operate? So beyond policy, what practices are in place, either because that's the way we've always done it, which I know that some people hate that term, or because the board ordered it from behind closed doors without a vote?
Okay. Great. I'm just going to add on to that. At this point in time, I can guarantee you and I can affirm my supervisor, Christine, has already reached out to me this morning and has been clear and concise on if there was information shared today. I'll be scheduling a meeting with Lana I have been in works with Christine, and she did keep me updated on quite a few things today that she's waiting on from me that are very time sensitive. So there isn't anything she hasn't communicated that couldn't be clear and concise, and it's sounding exactly what you're saying, including you, Tyler. So I just want to share that.
Okay, I appreciate it, Cheryl. Thank
Yeah.
you. So I don't see any more hands, so we can keep going with the presentation.
Okay, thank you for that, and thanks, Ryan, on the, because we will be still obtaining more feedback before we leave here today. Like I said, so we have it set up on strategically on a quarterly basis to come back with these policies, and like you said, you may have some that we just discussed that are going to need higher attention or maybe a greater need during that quarter period that are added on. There are new policies that have noted coming aboard, even in the new policies listed on that agenda in front of you. A few of those pertain to recent board inquiries that were kept abreast on, like the performance reviews. In the compensation classification studies that have already been approved, there are detailed job description, wage review policies and procedures. So the timing with those tying in together, that's why you'll see those new policies on that list. There are some policies in our manuals that are extremely old that are convenient for us to eliminate, such as a pager. We don't have pagers anymore. And then so on from there. When you look at the agenda and the list of policies on the second and third page, obviously there's 93. We did the tentative for the second quarter and third quarter. We did not do the fourth because within the next year it could shift around a little bit, but there are 93 that need to be evaluated and looked at. I will tell you, this Employee Relations Department and this HR department has already vetted line by line every single existing policy at this time, and we already know which ones cross-intercept with others. I'm going to give credit to Jeff Rogers, the Employee Relations Supervisor on my left. He has went through and vetted every single policy that we currently have, what is old, what updates need to be made per executive and this board. There's a detailed history that is going to make the labor for this work group go a lot more smoothly. So he has already reviewed and identified, the work group has it, every single policy we have in place right now and what conflicts, including all of the board input and recommendations from executive in the past year. So that's important to share. That review is done, vetted out already. Any additional questions?
Any more questions or comments at this point? No questions or comments so far.
Okay, so we are looking as a work group and jump in at the later part of this team. I know with, we're tentative at this time. Obviously, we'll reach out to Lana and we have some more work to do. But if we look at the first quarter, we would be coming back to this board around the first week of April. One of the key parts of the strategic plan on this policy review work group is that we're able to set those dates, lock them in with a calendar right now throughout the remainder of the year and stay locked in and committed to not only the board seeing it on their calendar, but for our moving efficiency going forward. So we are already looking at the first week of April to get with Lana and schedule that so that nothing falls through the crack. That is a key part of our strategic plan, is to set those timelines a year ahead and to stick to them, including your end as the board of directors. You will need ample time to review the proposed policy changes coming up in front of you and so on, right? So that you have it ahead of time to be able to review, provide input, and then we'll bring it back in front of you. Sound good? Does a 2-week window sufficient to the board, to a 2-week minimum to have these existing policies coming up in front of you? Does that give you enough time to be able to vet them out and be able to provide input prior to us coming back to a workshop? Is a 2-week window sufficient?
Go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, and I don't mean this to insult anybody. So I'm not confident that people doing homework is going to result in a sufficient review to come back and be prepared to walk through it. because that's what we kind of expect, and it doesn't, some do it, I'll be fair. Most don't. So I don't know if that process is going to work. I think an intensive sessions where we go through line by line is the only way it's going to happen. So if we're all honest on this call, and we're, giving an honest assessment of what we're willing to do outside of the meetings, which is to review and prepare and have your questions ready, it would be nice if you had them ready and submitted it in advance, but I don't expect that to happen. Otherwise, I think what we should do is we should set aside some time and schedule and walk through each of the policies, and then, because that's what the board's accustomed to. So that's just my opinion. I'm good either way, so.
So when are you proposing coming back, Cheryl?
Around the first week of April. We have it on here. I think it's the 4th, but we didn't lock in anything yet. April 4th.
So you're asking to have the workshop March 25th and then vote on it in 2 weeks? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. When is the first workshop in April? April 1st. Okay,
April 1st.
yeah.
Meeting day, too.
No,
So,
that's our workshop date. I didn't say that correctly.
so you're proposing that we workshop these on April 1st, but what was the 2-week turnover? What was that about?
That's what, and that was good input too, right? So are we, when we workshop together, is that our working session? Or do you want the photocopies? Do you want your draft versions 2 weeks prior to that workshop date?
Yes.
That's what we're asking,
Preferably, yeah.
Okay,
That way
yeah.
we can review them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the 2 week.
Kim?
That was
and
our
Tyler.
request. We could get a hard copy. How many pages are we talking about right now?
That's a easy, let me count.
Well, it's 11 policies that we'd be looking at.
I think you're going to, yeah, that one's coming up quickly.
Quite a few, probably, eh?
It's going to be quite a few pages. Each, if it sticks to somewhat what Cheryl has laid out, granted, we'll have different priorities based on what Tyler input gave, but it's going to be like a dozen or more policies every workshop probably, and so it's going to be 40, 50 plus pages.
Okay, so it'd be
Yeah.
better to
It's going to be
have it in
substantial.
hand.
If we're going to do line,
Absolutely.
if the consensus is to do line by line, there's no way, unless we have a whole day, we're going to line by line 15 policies, but we'll, if that's what we want to do, we'll narrow it down to a workable amount of policies and go through line by line all of our suggested edits, yeah. We did that for our recent code changes, it works well.
Okay.
And that's a good question, too. I appreciate that. Some of these policies that you see on the first quarter are literally minor updates. The existing policies are in place and haven't had like any, some are minor, some may take longer than the other, so.
Okay, Tyler?
Yeah, just in relation to what Ryan just stated, if there are policies impacting the hiring practice, it just and you've already identified them, I would hate to wait, 2 months to review and approve those. If you've already have those pulled out and ready to go. Just my thoughts, like we're talking about increasing efficiency for you guys, and I don't think waiting 2 months when you've already identified 11 policies is increasing efficiency. I mean, it's just my thought. I really appreciate the work you're doing, but you know what I'm saying from this standpoint, like if you have them identified, I don't know why we would be waiting so long.
So what I would say to that is if you guys want to break it up, we have availability in workshop space before April 1st. So if there's some barrier that exists in a policy that we can change to expedite the hiring process or just make things better than HR, I would encourage you to get it on a calendar with Lana because there is space, there is availability before April 1st. And then Lana.
Yeah, Austin, that's exactly what I was going to say. If they prioritize and just put one on even each workshop, we get good at it, go through it, ask the questions. If we see it before, we can, know what our questions are going to be. So I would have them prioritize, though. We've talked about it this morning, and they're going to share that with Cheryl. So, and I want to see what their priorities are to get on there. Yep, that's it.
Okay, we can keep going, Cheryl.
No, understood, and I think that's the notations that I had made for the work group too, when Tyler first brought it up earlier today. We may have a policy that needs to come before, outside of this quarter deadline. That's understandable, right? So.
All right, we can keep going.
That is all I had at the moment, other than coming back and getting at least that groundwork and feedback from the board, unless the work group feels we're missing anything at this point.
Okay. Well, we appreciate the work that you guys have done on this and the progress that you've made. As mentioned, if you have any glaring policies that can be revised to expedite the hiring process, get with Lana, get it on the workshop agenda prior to April 1st. And then when you're done with those, get them to us so we can start reviewing them, please. And then, yeah, that's all I have. Anyone else have anything to contribute right now? Okay, we appreciate it.
Appreciate the time today. Thank you.
Yep. And then the last item is tasks assigned.
Yep, and I think. Didn't open or close.
Okay, so let's do this section in closed if you guys don't mind, because some of these tasks are proprietary sensitive. So we'll go in closed, and then after this is done, we'll be adjourned from the workshop, so there won't be any open sessions left.